VanHouten of Muscle Mason, Muscle. I was about to say Muscle Mason, Muscle
Close.
Maven Radio,
You got it.
which which is a cool name. When I first saw you come out with that name, I was like, oh shit,
I, I,
and
I was on top of things with that
you
one.
were on top of it, and you actually did the Shrug Collective for a bit. So that was some crossover we had, but
Mhm.
people may not know this, but we've never even really hung out in person.
I know, it's crazy. Like, were you avoiding me at like Paleo FX, or I'm not really sure what was
Well,
happening then?
what happened to Paleo FX is I'm just so popular that
Yeah,
if you want to get through to me, you're gonna have to
yeah,
fight the crowds.
that's
So,
fair. That's fair. Yeah.
uh, and so tell us a bit about what you. So you were it was formerly Paleo Radio. It's now Muscle Maven Radio. You've been in the game for a long time. I think it's really cool to talk to people who've been in this circle in this game
Yeah.
uh, for as long as we have, because we've seen a lot of trends come up and down, and it's comical at times. And
Yeah.
so like new coaches coming in. So a lot of the people who watch this are coaches or athletes and people who are really into wellness. A lot of times they may be newer to the game, like 5 years or less, and it's like, oh, okay, you've been paying attention long enough. We go, oh, the same trend is coming back and this and that.
Yeah.
However, the trend we're seeing now, I haven't seen in like 50 years, and I think it's great, which is this organ meat
Yeah.
situation.
Well, I mean, is it even a trend yet? Like, I feel like sometimes when you're so immersed in your own specific niche, you feel like that's the world when it really isn't. And I think a lot of people, that can almost be the downfall to a lot of people in the fitness and wellness industry, and like all the stuff we're going through right now, where things that seem common sense or obvious to us are absolutely not in the greater context of the world and social media. So like, I wonder if people even do have organ meat on their radar, but that's what I'm trying to change, obviously, with my book.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Well, here
Um,
people
yeah.
people like us are so early on the wave that it can almost be uh uh uh, what's discouraged. Sometimes there's times where it's like, oh, I'm discouraged. Like I've been hitting
Yeah.
this drum for a year, and it's like, no, they're coming, they're coming. It's just that you're such an early adopter, that we get to remember that. Like
Yeah.
CrossFit, I got into CrossFit in 2007. I was like, it's gonna be the next thing, and it took like 3 or 4 years for it to be the next thing.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing, like you're talking about, is we get such narrow vision, and zooming out to a global perspective of health, which is something that something I've been interested in. I imagine you've been interested in, and watching the current conditions of the planet and the average human and their health that can be discouraging as well. But when we look at something like CrossFit, if you're in CrossFit, it seems so huge, but Zumba is bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Zumba
Mm-hmm.
is bigger.
Tracy
They make more
Anderson or whoever
money.
that
They
thing
get more
is.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like studying mainstream gets interesting when you're so far down a niche. So yeah, please tell us, how did you get started in the health and fitness world, and tell us a little bit about your journey, please.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stop me because, as you know, as a podcast host, I can just kind of talk forever. And I really like
As
what you
long
were.
as long
Go
as
ahead.
I'm entertained, I'm
Okay.
gonna let you keep talking.
Yeah, cut me off when it gets boring. I'm like, now let me
Yeah.
talk about my deep childhood drama. And you're like, all right, we'll just keep moving on from here because you're bored.
No, I'll let you keep going with that.
Okay, but I wanted to touch on what you just said about like the idea of us being sort of so like, not even necessarily entrenched isn't the word, but like so in our own niche that we have a hard time kind of seeing what the rest of the world is doing. And I think that this is something that I've been actively trying to combat, being in this world and doing the work that I'm doing. And I've struggled at times with feeling like I haven't pursued a specific thing, whether it's sport or education or whatever in the fitness and health world, so that I'm not like an expert. Like I'm not like the functional fitness expert, or I'm not the paleo expert, because I've always tried to just kind of learn about everything. And in some ways, I feel like sometimes I feel like it's hindered me because I'm a generalist, and that's not sexy. That's not easy to market. Like, hey, I'm just a person who like knows some things. You want to talk to me? Like that doesn't always work. But I feel now in the world that we're in, it's helped me because I believe I'm able to use my platform to hear from more people, to put out information that's more, that's less myopic, you know? So like being this sort of like, I know a little bit about a lot. I feel like I'm able to connect with more people because people aren't looking at me and being like, oh, you're just that like crazy carnivore person who thinks that eating raspberries is going to kill you, or I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and I certainly have my biases based on my experience. And I certainly have things that I like to champion because I feel strongly about them. But I like to think that people who listen to my podcast or follow what I'm doing know that I'm trying to really like maintain a hold on like reality and my place in it, and not just being like, this is this tiny little section of the world and this is the right section and this is where I stand. And if you're not here, see you later. You know, like, I just don't think that's the best way to help people. Anyway.
Do you look back on, rewind 5 years ago and go, oh shit, I was wrong about that?
I mean, I certainly think I've probably been wrong about a ton of things my entire life. I mean, that's what being a human being is. But, and I also think that some of it is like just simple human maturity. Like I got into CrossFit. I was a little bit later than you, but I still considered myself an OG. It was like 2008 or something. I moved to New York.
Oh, definitely an OG. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went to the black box back when it was like dirty and disgusting. And I felt like I was really excited about it. And I did the same thing.
You're building your immune system.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I did like what everybody else did when I got into CrossFit, which was like be obsessed with it and tell everybody about it constantly. And, I kind of did the same thing with paleo, and I still will because I believe that it's a common sense approach to nutrition. But yeah, maybe when I was younger, I was a little bit more like, oh, if you don't see this, you're an idiot. Whereas now I'm just like, there's too many people out there from too many backgrounds and experiences and requirements and challenges for me to try to pretend that we're all going to see things through the same lens. Like, that's just not what happens. So I also feel like one of the things that I do now is that I put information out there. I connect with people when they're interested, but I'm less aggressively trying to go after people to teach them. So whether it's like people that I love or people in my family, like it used to be, I was like, eat better, dummies, like sort your shit out. And now I'm just like, they don't want to hear it.
It comes with experience and maturity. I'm the same, I've had the same experience. I almost, the fortunate thing about paleo is people were able to throw a label on it and are able to, a community formed around that word and that term. And anything in the world, a lot of what gets something to a point ends up being the thing that holds it back. So the name catapulted it into the conversation. Rob Wolf, big props, Paleo Solution. And but now, I mix it up in the health and fitness world a lot. And to the people who are uninitiated to having been in this world for long enough, they think, if I go to certain places, like, oh, are you paleo or vegan? It's like you got to be one or the other. I'm just like, I'm just kind of, eating food over here. Mm-hmm. But I like what you said. It's a common sense approach. And so but people love labels. They want to be able to say, I do this thing. I belong to this group. And so then it can be exclusionary at that point. So I'm wondering if we're getting to that point where it's like all of us that got into paleo. By the way, the transition to paleo for me was not difficult. It was like, oh, I just got to cut out oatmeal. It was like, I was like, because already doing a common sense approach. Mm-hmm. And so I really like how you said that. I'm curious if you don't mind sharing. You can just tell me to fuck off. But how old are you?
36.
36. Okay, I'm 38. Now, have you read the book Mastery?
I don't believe I have.
Robert Greene. Okay, so Robert Greene. So here's the thing:
the 48 Laws of Power guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read that one.
You've read that one. Okay, so I think he also wrote Seduction, which is a really good book. Okay. Everybody who wants to have influence should probably read that, because it's not just about seducing a single person; it's about seducing a crowd. But he wrote this book Mastery, and he outlined all these people who made really big innovations throughout history. And it was one of those things where like someone got really deep in the trenches in one topic for 7 to 10 years, because it takes about 7 to 10 years to master something. Yeah. But what ends up happening is this actually gave me a lot of peace around where I was at in the world. And I go, oh, I'm actually pretty young. Like
Mhm,
you're pretty young,
mhm,
and we've done a lot at by our age, right? And so I imagine
mhm.
that you're probably like judging your accomplishments or your ability to connect with people and have a message with someone who's 50.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I look at Joe Rogan, it's like the dude's in his 50s. And then and so like the mastery conversation is when someone has mastered three different things. So it's like this one woman, she really innovated in people who are missing limbs, like making arms and stuff. But like I think she had like a physical therapy degree, and then she had like a robotics degree, and like all these different, and it's like all three of these things, like that innovation wouldn't have been possible. So sometimes, and I like reminding people this is not just you, but the audience. It's just that when we sometimes we're like, oh, I wasted all that time. Like I spent a decade in IT,
Mm,
information systems technology.
mhm, mhm.
And I'm like, how does that come into play? And then of course it has. And so yeah, I want to throw that out there because it,
Yeah.
that's something that at our age we've probably mastered two things and maybe coming into our third.
Maybe one and a half. Who knows? I
How
do
long have you
like
been
that.
podcasting?
Well, I like what you're saying too, because I feel similarly. And I think I'm not the most perfect positive thinker in the world, but I think one of the things that I've done pretty well at is frame everything I've done as an experience that
Mm,
leads me towards the next thing. So, there are certainly times when I have thought, similar to what you're saying, where I'm like, shit, if I had gotten into this like 5 years earlier, imagine how far I'd be. If I had
yeah.
gotten into bodybuilding or CrossFit or whatever it is that I was doing just a little earlier. But I think about, so your IT thing, I was in corporate communications for like 5 to 7 years right out of university, and, working in commercial insurance, like making good money, worst job ever, sucked. But I was good at it. Like, so I went into school for communications and marketing because I'm a talker and a writer and I like that stuff. And then I went into this corporate world because that's where the money is. And then right around the economic downturn in like 2009, I was like, oh shit, like I can't keep doing this because this is soul sucking and I need to get out while there's still time. And I kind of made this transition, but I immediately went into the publishing world. I was working for magazines for a while, and then that steamrolled into the podcasting, and I can get into that. But all that to say, these all make sense. Like the trajectory makes sense. It was communications, it was talking, it was writing, it was wanting to share what you know with other people and just moving it into a trajectory that is more in line with the stuff that I'm interested in. So I definitely totally have these moments where I'm like, man, if I'd started when I was 20, but I still, generally speaking, I feel pretty good about the way this works, because I do think, and I talk about this with a lot of successful people on podcasts and elsewhere, that there's almost an inevitability to it too, because you had to go through some things that didn't make sense for you to get to the stuff that does. Like there's a reason people aren't successful when they're 20 most of the time, because they're still
Yeah.
sorting their shit out. They don't know, like they're still making mistakes. So yeah, I think that all kind of makes sense. I'm happy with the way things are going generally.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a lot of people because I mean, I've had a lot of people ask me. Yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had some hard times, and I've done things the hard way.
Mhm.
And I'll talk about that sometimes. And people go, "Well, do you think you had to do it the hard way to get to where you are now?" I go, "Well, I did. So yes,
Yeah.
but you don't have to do that. But we're here to learn from each other. And one thing I've noticed a trend in the market, and so you've been established in this market for a long time, and there's a lot of people that are wanting to flood in. And a big part of it is because similar to 2008, we're experiencing a lot of uncertainty. And when that happens and people's corporate gig cuts their pay in half or lets them go, they realize, oh, all this certainty and control that I thought I had actually was an illusion. How do I take control of my own life and realizing I want to help people and be of more service, because
Mhm.
corporate actually doesn't care about me. Uh, and so what I'm witnessing is a huge influx of new coaches wanting to come in and learn how to do that business. And it's like, wow, okay, so there's a lot of people coming in. Are you noticing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm noticing a lot of people who are using this weird, uncertain time and this time that they've been maybe stuck in their houses or they've lost jobs or whatever, trying to pivot and come up with new ways to either do the same work they were doing or to do the work that they've kind of always wanted to do and never given themselves maybe permission to do. And, you know, I've made a lot of changes over the last, I guess it's been 4 months. Sometimes it feels like a couple weeks, and sometimes it feels like 10 years since this whole shit went down. But
Yeah.
I mean, I've made a lot of changes too. And I think a lot of it boils down to not making changes based out of fear or desperation or other people telling you should, but based on something that you truly deeply want to do and you have well-defined kind of goals and objectives. Because I have so many people coming to me. And I do a little bit of coaching on the side too, mostly for women. It's not really my main sort of gig, but I do a little bit of that, more like high level kind of like lifestyle coaching rather than specific training or whatever. And a lot of people will come to me and just be like, all right, I want to get super lean. I want to have a 6-pack, or I want to I've been doing keto for 10 years and I hate it now, but I kind of want to stick to it to help me stick to it. And I'm like, okay, but why though? Why? And if you don't have a good answer for me, I don't want to go through all this with you, because you shouldn't have to do something crazy or make this crazy change or transition when you literally don't know why you want to do it. You know, that should be your first step. So anyway, I mean, long story short, I haven't even gotten around to talking about the podcast thing yet, but I switched from Paleo Magazine Radio, which is a podcast that I was hosting for years, and it was affiliated with Paleo Magazine. And over the quarantine, I bought it and rebranded it to be my own podcast. And it's funny because what you were talking about earlier with the concept of having like a really cute, like branded name or whatever, being both kind of a positive and a negative, is exactly what I've been saying about Paleo and Paleo, the podcast specifically, for years. It's great because if anybody's interested in Paleo and they Google it, guess what comes up, right? There I am. But for the vast majority of people who are like, oh, Paleo, I heard that's a caveman thing. That sounds stupid. That's a trend. They're not going to come listen to me, even though I'm talking to awesome people. I'm not necessarily talking about Paleo all the time. It's a super, super good resource for everybody, but people aren't going to listen to it because they don't know what Paleo is or they don't care. So it was kind of a feeling that I had wanted to make a transition for a long time. And it ended up working out really well because the magazine, I don't know if you even followed this, but the magazine was making some changes. They aren't a print publication anymore as of like literally March. They decided that they were going to take it all online. And along with that, they decided they wanted to get rid of the podcast. I don't know why. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me if you're moving to a digital platform to get rid of your podcast, but I mean, that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
And so I told them, I was like, all right, well, I've been hosting this podcast for 3 years. I've grown it pretty good. I've got a great, like sort of little, but mighty kind of audience who are really into it. I like doing this. Just give me the podcast. Just give it to me. Just give it to me.
Give it to me.
I want it. Just give it to me.
And this reminds me of the conversation I had with Anders Varner about Barbell Shrugged.
Really? Is it the same thing? And were you like, no, fuck you, I'm not giving it to you. You need to. Anyway, we can get into that side of it.
I was hoping he was wanting it.
Okay, well, that's better. I would have liked that situation. Because they were like, we don't want it, but we don't want to give it to you. So I had a decision to make. Where I, for a minute, I was like, you know what, there's a lot going on here. Maybe I should just move on. I've been doing this podcast for a while. It's not like it's a huge money maker. Very few people are getting rich doing a podcast, but I kind of sat on it for a minute and I was like, I really like this form of communication. I really like how many people I get to meet and how much I get to learn, and just the connections that I make. And when people message me and say that something helps them, like that's meaningful to me. And I worked really hard to build that audience. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep it. So I'm just going to figure this out. So I went back to them and I'm like, all right, I'll buy it. Okay. I wanted it. I felt a little entitled to it, but that's my own bad. Like you're not entitled to anything ever. So I bought it and I rebranded it.
Be careful who you say that to.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, but listen, like I will admit freely that I was pissed initially because I did feel like I deserved it. I was like, I'm the one doing all the work. I'm the one who got this audience. Like I'm the one who does it. You don't want it anymore, but you won't give it to me. And then I, of course, like checked myself. I'm like, why do you think you deserve anything? It's not, you don't. Like if you want it, you need to invest in it and you need to work in it and work for it. And so that's, it took me a couple days to get over it. And then I bought it, rebranded it right away. And I think I've been getting really good feedback. I've been able to broaden the scope of what I get to talk about. And I think people are enjoying it and it's doing well. And like the sponsors are happy and they're coming to me instead of through Paleo magazine. And it's been fantastic. So
very cool.
It worked out. Yeah.
Yeah. There's in that story I was hearing like, oh, okay, you got frustrated, it felt entitled. And I think this is like I go through this too. It's like I'll get turned up for like 2 or 3 days at a time sometimes, where I'm like, it shouldn't be like this, and I go, oh wait, that I'm out of touch with reality. This is I want something to be different than what it is. And if I want it to be different, then I have to create the actions that will result in that difference. And most people don't do it. This is why you're successful, is because the average human being will just remain in that fantasy that it should be different, but isn't willing to actually take the steps themselves. They definitely want other people to change, but they don't want to take the steps themselves. And so, this is what makes you successful. I mean, as I think that's almost everybody. That's the difference. People sit around and complain, but they don't make the change for themselves. Good.
And I mean, I think it ultimately goes back to, you probably just didn't really want it that bad in the first place, really. Like it's the same with, weight loss or physical goals or whatever. And it's funny because I'm not sure if you know Ben Pakulski, but he's another.
I love Ben. Yeah, we get along so well.
Yeah, he's another meathead that I work with pretty closely. I help him out with his podcast and I co-host with him pretty regularly and stuff. And one of the things he said that of course is quite common sense again, but I hadn't really kind of internalized it, was he's like, people come to me constantly for body composition goals and they want to lose fat. And 99.9% of the time, a weight loss goal is not enough to make people make changes. And even if it's completely ruining your quality of life, even if you're super unhealthy, even if you've been trying to lose weight for 100 years, a simple weight loss goal just isn't enough because it's not concrete enough. It's not like, well, what's your life going to be when you've lost your 50 pounds or whatever? And it's just not enough to maintain motivation. You need to have like a deep rooted intrinsic desire to make a change. And then you have to set out these very specific, tangible goals to get there. And so when people say like, I just want to lose fat, I just want to look better, I just want to lose some weight, like that means nothing to anybody. And it's not going to help you make a change. So, I mean, the hardest step really is determining like, what do you really want? And what are you willing to do to get it? And then
people are unpracticed in that. And so like, what I found is people who want to lose weight, they're on and off the diet train, all that kind of stuff, because you're right. It's not sticky enough. There's no real reason for them to do it. And so what we witness is, people have to hit rock bottom. He's like, okay, now you have heart disease and the doctor said you're fucked if you don't clean something up in the next 5 years. And then you start seeing, maybe you see a change. So there's this loss aversion. It's like, oh, I'm about to lose my life. Now I'm motivated. So that's like one side of the coin. But what I like, one of the things I like to focus on with people is a vision of the future of themselves that's different than right now. And that's very difficult for people. It takes a lot of coaching to get someone there, in my experience, because everyone is so practiced at avoiding shit. It's like, oh, I know what I don't want. Like everyone knows what they don't want, but they have no idea what they do want. And it's because that's what our parents did. We as human beings, we got to where we are on planet Earth because we're survivalists, right? We can survive and adapt, and like humans are the most adaptable creature on the planet. Well, maybe aside from like these little like one-celled organisms, but we're not as good as cockroaches. Maybe one day. But we're so practiced at avoiding death, and we're so good at avoiding death that I think that just in the last few decades, people have started waking up to, oh, we're actually in a transition into we're not physically this focus on survival has actually created a scenario because we create an abundance of food that makes us sick. It's like this instant gratification of I survived the day is what's creating long-term health impacts. And so I think that if we're going to be successful as humanity and being healthy, we have to start teaching people how to have a vision of the future, and which is inspiring. And so, yeah, it's I'm glad you're doing that. You are painting a picture of the future that's different for people.
Thank you. I'm trying to just shove grass-fed liver down people's throats and see what happens.
So on that note, for breakfast I had liver. I had
You did?
Yeah, raw liver every day. Every day I start my day with raw liver.
That's badass.
As of recently,
beef liver or chicken?
Beef liver. I get it from Bel Campo.
Nice.
I'm out here on the West Coast, so like they'll just drop it off my doorstep, which is kind of nice.
Beautiful.
What's your favorite brand for getting? Like if you're gonna eat raw organ meat, like, who are you getting it from? And do you eat raw? Or do you cook everything?
Well, that's actually a good question because currently I am quarantined in Canada, in beautiful Canada.
Oh, you're in Canada.
I spend half my time in Canada and half the time in the States. So when I'm in the States, I love Bel Campo. They're great. Anya's amazing. I actually interviewed her for Muscle Maven Radio recently. Fantastic.
Nice.
There's a bunch of good companies. Like I know I've actually never ordered from, but I'm very familiar with US Wellness Meats. Those guys are great for providing.
We've gotten stuff from them before.
Yeah, they're great. Around here, it's funny because I'm in Ontario, which is close to Quebec, which is French. Not sure how into Canadian geography you are, but the French.
I've been learning. I've become a fan of Canadians. I've made a lot of Canadian friends. Yeah, the Canadians are the best. It's like Texas and Canada. Like there's something about Texans and Canadians that I'm attracted to. It's crazy.
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm like a dual citizen. So I like to say that I have, like, depending on your opinion, the best of both worlds because, I'm like a pretty tolerant, like I have a pretty good sense of humor about myself, like Canadians, but I can be like a bit of a dick when I need to, which is the so it's like, it's the perfect mix. I'm not like too much of a dick. I'm not too much of a nice guy. Like I like to kind of mix it up. But
that's good. You're probably pretty close to perfect as a human being.
I'm trying real hard. But so anyway, so the guys in Quebec, our French friends in Quebec, they eat a little bit differently maybe than others in terms of their, like they do a lot more organ meats and they have like a lot more like the pate and foie gras and like they eat horse and like stuff that maybe in the States isn't quite as common. So I'm able to access like some pretty good organ meats locally. Like I don't have to order online. There's like a farm just like 30 minutes outside of the city that I go to, and they have all kinds of stuff. So, and I've had to do a lot of like weird research because this cookbook I'm doing a lot of weird recipes that for, stuff that isn't really easy to come by. But it's been really cool because I have discovered a love for different parts of the animal that I had never even thought of before. Like when you think organ meats, most people are like liver, get your liver in. But there's a lot more to it. And a lot of it is delicious. Some of it is challenging, but a lot of it is like really good. And it's been cool to experiment and play around with different things and make stuff successfully that's actually good to eat, not just like I have to eat it because it's good for me. Like it's actually tasty. So it's been cool.
What is the benefits of organ meat? People, are okay, well, I eat meat and I eat vegetables and I'm getting everything I need. Why are organ meats so important?
Yeah, so different organ meats have different nutritional profiles. And as everybody who, has done any research knows that it tends to be the most nutrient dense sort of ounce for ounce of any edible food on the planet, which is pretty impressive. Like you've got like liver and maybe like oysters. They're just like pound for pound, you're getting the most micronutrients. So just like an entire range of like vitamins and minerals that you really can't get in such small concentrated doses anywhere else. You have to take a bunch of weird supplements that may or may not be bioavailable. Like you know the drill. Like taking supplements is never going to be as good as eating it from whole food sources.
It's never supplements. It's a good stop gap, but it's never the solution.
Yeah, and it's exactly like you do it when you don't have a better option. But it's basically, yeah, it's just like, if you want, and I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but like the breakdown of the nutrient list in liver or heart, for example, antioxidants like CoQ10 that people supplement, they pop pills all the time, massive, like B vitamins. It's super nutrient dense in a small amount. So again, maybe you will get some of these vitamins from eating a big steak, which is delicious and great, and you're eating 8 ounces of steak and it's fine. But you could also eat like 2 ounces of liver and be good for like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't try to get too woo-woo around food, but like, I feel nourished, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I feel nourished when I eat liver in a way that is almost like magical. Like, you're not feeling that when you eat chicken breast. Like, you're just
Yeah. I was hanging out with my buddy Mike Salemi, and both of us get, you know, we've spent a lot of time in nature doing some weird shit. And the thing is, the more time you spend in nature doing weird shit, the more, like, I remember growing up and hearing stories about, Native Americans. They could like talk to the trees, and they could hear the animals, and they knew what was happening in nature. And the European comes in and is just completely mystified by what's going on. And so, like, having gone and hung out with like people down in South America that are still living in the jungle or in the mountains, that are like in that thing, and I spent a whole week just doing their thing, and then my whole experience of the environment starts to change, and I go,
yeah.
oh, the trees are talking to me. So when
How much
and
ayahuasca were you taking when they were
a
talking to you?
a lot of ayahuasca. No, but with or without the medicine, the medicine. I
Yeah.
mean, when you consume the plants, what they call it mother ayahuasca, because when you consume it, then you can communicate with all the plants. And so, and then they all have different lessons, which is, now I'm getting way out there. I may have lost some people, but here's the thing is, like, that's a learned skill, like being in touch with the environment. And then, so, my friend Mike Salemi, I imagine you know him or know of him.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of the similar work I have. We both spend a lot of time with tribes and whatnot. And when we touch it, we're like, oh, this is different. And we put it in our
Mm-hmm.
mouth and chew it. It's like, oh, wow. And it's like instantly there's this recognition that this is alive. This is like when I get very fresh liver, just open it up. I go, when I put it in my mouth, immediately there's recognition. But then the rest of the day, I notice nice, clean energy, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of clarity. I've actually dialed back my produce intake, my vegetation intake a bit, because I noticed that when I eat a lot of vegetation, my digestion's not as good.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've dialed back just like the other traditional meat consumption too, and done organ meats. I got a question about that. Is if I'm eating a lot more organ meat and not as much muscle meat, am I, if my goal is to build muscle, if I want to be, a hunky dude, am I, is that okay? Is the organ meat, how should I be eating?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and just going back to the ancestral sort of thing that you were talking about, like speaking with people who really do live closer to nature, it is funny when you look at it that back before people could Google the nutrient profile of a steak, people were hunting in the forest and they were harvesting animals and they were eating the liver and they were saving the muscle meat for their animals. And they
Yep.
didn't know. They weren't like, oh, well, this one's kind of tastier, or like this one I know just has more, iron in it. Like they just knew inherently what was more nutritious. And so I think that's like, it's a cool thing to highlight, because one of the things I'm trying to communicate with this book is how arbitrary it is that North American Western culture thinks organ meats are extreme and gross. Nobody else in the world thinks that. Nobody
Yep.
in the history of humans have thought that. We are now uniquely privileged enough to waste large parts of the animal just because the steak or the chicken thigh tastes nicer. But throughout history and all of the planet, we have eaten the entire animal. And it's bizarre I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just trying to like show people a side of it that they may not have seen. But if you're already a meat eater, what is going on that you think eating this hunk of the animal over here is normal, and this part over here of the same animal is disgusting and weird? You're eating an animal, okay? We've established this. You have killed an animal and you're eating it. So why wouldn't you nourish yourself, honor the animal, eat the whole thing, not waste it. Like it's a very uniquely privileged Western approach to eating that I think we need to revisit. But anyway, going back to your question about being hunky in protein. So, as my friend, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, I'm sure you know her, and she's big on, protein for muscle growth and longevity and all of these things. And she has more recently been kind of teaching me the specifics of some of this stuff with regards to eating protein for the amino acid profile more than just, okay, I've got this many grams of protein. And she does speak to sort of minimum daily amounts that are good, and you should be eating probably more protein than most people are. And so with that said, I would probably say that if you're actively trying to build muscle and you're a dude, you're not like a 90-pound girl or whatever, like you're going to need a fair bit of protein every day. And it's probably going to be pretty tough to get that like strictly from liver and heart. Because even if you're like a real beast, like you're probably not eating 2 pounds of liver a day or whatever, So I think that if you're eating a lot of organ meat, you probably are getting a great amino acid profile. You're probably getting really high quality protein. That's great. But again, if you're sort of 180 pound, 200 pound dude trying to actively gain muscle, you're probably going to need to beef it up, no pun intended, with the amount of protein you're taking in every day, because it's just hard to get it from purely organ meat sources. I would tell most people are going the other direction. Like they're eating, again, chicken breast, ground beef, lean ground turkey, boring shit like that, which is fine. But maybe start incorporating some organ meat. So chop up some liver into your ground beef, like add some heart to whatever you're eating, so it's kind of like trying to find that balance. But again, the great thing about organ meats is if you're eating them for nutrition versus just trying to get your protein in, you really don't have to eat a lot. It's like a good bang for your buck. You get a couple ounces in and you're getting like way more nutrients than you would from other sources.
Yeah, I heard just a few ounces of liver a week.
Yeah.
And you're checking a lot of boxes. You don't have to eat a lot.
Yeah.
I'm probably eating 1 to 2 ounces. Today was probably 2 ounces. But I don't weigh it out, but I just pull it out on the board and chop it up and eat it. And I'm still eating plenty of other meat too. I still like my ribeye.
And it's funny because I actually haven't eaten a lot of raw organ meats and I really want to. I'm like very into it. But whenever I'm getting the stuff, I'm usually getting it already frozen. And for some reason, I'm unsure about how to do that and how to maximize that. Like I'd rather it just be like fully fresh. Like I'm getting like the real fresh stuff and just like slicing it up and eating it.
Well, what helped me out is I went and hung out with Paul Saladino. And
yes, of course, yeah.
And
I don't think he even eats as much organ meats as me, by the way. I interviewed him a couple days ago, and I'm like, I think that I have you beat personally. I'm just saying.
You may. Well, the thing is, I walk into his house, and he goes, "Do you want? Let's eat some spleen and heart." He had like a whole spread of everything, and he was just slicing it up, and he's like, he hands it to me, and I go, "Raw," and he goes, "Yeah," and I go, "Okay." So at first I was opposed to it, and then he made me feel comfortable with it. And I had no idea where it came from, but I was like, this guy seems like he checks things out. I'll go with it. It was from, I think that particular batch was US Wellness Meats. But that day I had raw lamb testicle.
Delish.
And that was actually that's my favorite raw meat I've ever had.
Lamb is also one of the more delicious animals to eat. Like if I had to list like my top favorite animals to consume, lamb is like possibly top 3. It's just a delicious animal. And it's funny because one of the big organs that I like to eat, that I eat a lot of, is heart, which is really actually probably a great intro meat for a lot of people because it is a muscle meat. So it's basically the same as like eating a, steak or whatever. It's not like a weird kind of textural thing. It's a muscle meat. But one of the things that I've realized when I've been like cooking and making a lot of them is that an elk heart and a lamb heart and a buffalo heart and a chicken heart, they taste different. They taste of the animal and what the animal's eating. And lamb heart is delicious. If you haven't had it yet, you got to crush some lamb heart. So good. Yeah.
I'll definitely get some lamb heart. What got you into the organ meat thing? Like, why is it just the nutrient stuff? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was sort of a common sense kind of evolution from paleo and the idea of trying to eat the most nutrient dense foods possible, and also to be as aware of the impact you're making on the planet as possible in terms of being wasteful or not. And so that all kind of, again, was just sort of a common sense kind of evolution. But I also, looking back at my life, I feel like I always kind of was leaning in that direction, because even before I cared about nutrition, and when I was like a teenager in my early 20s, I didn't know anything. I didn't care. You can get away with whatever. You eat Pop-Tarts all day. You still look good. It's fine. I still sort of, I liked meat. I liked meat a lot. That's kind of where I gravitated, and I liked dark meat, and I liked rare meat, and I liked oysters and anchovies, and just like really strong tasting meat. Like I always kind of
It's
liked that stuff.
rich. It's rich meat,
Yes.
and it's because
Yes.
it's rich in nutrients.
Yes. And I just sort of always leaned in that direction. And then, when I became like, I graduated university and I traveled a lot, and I was living in New York for a while, and like was exposed to all these different cultural foods and stuff like that. And I just always approached eating. And I try to think like I approach life this way too, but I always approached eating like it was like an adventure. Like I just wanted to try new things and have new experiences and try different foods. And I always saw it like it was such a low risk endeavor, because if you try something new, even if it's weird or extreme or different, the worst thing that could happen is that you don't like it. Like you're just like, okay, I tried liver and I didn't really like it. Like, okay, move on with your life. But if you like something new, you're exposed to this whole different thing, and it could be exciting. It could help your health. It could be, and like different sort of cultural cuisines. Like, yeah, maybe these people like to eat like insects on a stick, and that seems weird to you, but there's like millions of people who eat that way. So like, get over yourself and just try something. Like maybe you like it. And
Yeah.
and so I've always kind of, it's like the intersection of just like the fun stuff that I like to do, travel and eat and try new things and have these experiences, and then the health and like pragmatic side of it. Like, this is beneficial for you and it's good for you, and why not? And I really have just been like kind of doing it on my own for a couple of years now. And late last year, late 2019, I got it in my head because I was at like some event, I think it was KetoCon or something, and I was talking to some friends, and I just felt like everybody I knew had written a fucking cookbook. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I should write a cookbook. I'm a writer. I know what I'm doing. I'm not stupid. I should write a cookbook. And I was thinking in my head,
You know what? That's the exact thing that is going to get someone off the couch. I'm not stupid. I'm like,
I'm an idiot. Well,
I want more insight to your internal dialogue. But it's
okay. So further insight is I know people who have written cookbooks that I feel like, I'm just going to say diplomatically, are no smarter or more capable than I am. Okay. We'll just
that's
say
how
that.
I feel about a lot of just books.
I'm like, this person got something published, so why can't I? Like, I felt that way. And so all of this is kind of like percolating in my head. And I was like, I feel like this is a valuable thing to talk about. It's not really being talked about much. Like, you can Google, there are probably 3 or 4 organ meat related cookbooks out there, and they're usually from like French chefs or hunters or something. So I'm like, I have a unique niche here. I'm a normal woman I'm not a professional chef. I didn't grow up eating extreme things. I'm a normal person, kind of. So in that,
Whatever you say.
Exactly, whatever. No one knows what that means anyway. But like, if I can enjoy this, if I can learn it, if I can teach myself, so can you. And it might make you feel healthier, and it might be exciting, and it might be fun. And that's what life should be. And so I kind of just started playing around with it. And I just had a very strong image in my mind that I'm like, I'm doing this, even if I have to write it and like print it off myself and just send it to people in the mail. Like, I'm going to do it. And so I feel like I had such a fully formed idea that when the time came around that I actually got to speak to a publisher, they were like, yeah, you seem like you're pretty like on top of this. Like, you want to do it. And I think they liked my enthusiasm, and they were like, yeah, there's not a lot of people doing this, so let's get on it. And it happened very quickly. Like, I literally started writing this book in like December or January, and it's coming out this summer. So I don't play around.
What are all the reasons why we should be eating nose to tail?
So many reasons. I mean, health. First of all, you know it. You're doing it every morning because it's healthy and it's good for you. Sustainability, if we're, again, I'm not speaking to vegans because, you know, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but the vast majority of us are still eating meat. And if you are eating meat, it is just a sustainable, ethical, practical concept to eat the entire animal and waste less of it if you care at all about the planet and the animals that you are harvesting for your nutrition. Eat most people, right?
I found out recently, I was hanging out with my buddy AJ in Utah, and he's got a family of ranchers. And when this whole COVID thing went down, I got really interested in the food supply chain because we're about to see, it's about to get weird.
Mm-hmm.
The repercussions of everything shutting down for the last few months won't be felt for a year or two. And meat supply is actually one of these.
Yep.
So even more reason to utilize the entire animal. And he was telling me, I was like, oh, you know, I was gonna, you know, looking at buying a cow or whatever. It's like, or just getting some cuts from him. And I go, what about the organ meat? He's like, well, I could just give you that for free.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, they're just, you know, they throw it out. And I'm going, what is, like, it was just blowing my mind of like, I will spend, like, I should be spending more money on liver than on ribeyes, in my opinion.
Yes.
And it's just backwards.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
that's another crazy thing too, is that it is more economical as well. So like you can buy a beef heart that's 2.5, 3 pounds, this big, for like $15 that can feed people for days. It's a ton of meat. And another thing that a lot of like factory abattoirs or like places where they're harvesting the animals do is they take the organ meats. If they don't throw them out, they'll use them maybe for animal feed or something, but they also export them to places like Mexico and places where people eat organ meats because it's normal. So we're literally like killing these animals, sending the nutritious stuff to other people and eating the leftovers. Like that's what we're doing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about organ meat. For me, I want to be more careful on where the animal came from. Going to the ethical perspective here of, you know, it broke my heart when I heard they're just throwing out pieces of the animal. I was like, that's dishonoring the animal.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't mince words on that. And, you know, let's put the whole thing to use, because if you're just throwing shit away, what the fuck, you know, that's life that you're throwing away. It's nuts.
It's crazy.
Yeah. What are anything else? I mean, we've got, obviously it's good for your health to go nose to tail. And
good for your wallet. Good for your
wallet. Yep.
Good for, again, the sort of food cycle. Like, again, if you want to really learn, like go deep dive on, if you're still a little unsure about like, okay, well, is our beef habit destroying the planet? Is farming animals inherently bad for the planet? All of these things, you need to go to obviously Diana Rogers and Rob Wolf, and they've got that book, Sacred Cow, and like that, they've dug deep on it, and that they will speak to it more eloquently than I can. But the short answer is, it's not about meat being bad for us or meat being bad for the planet. It's the system that we've created to make this mass-produced, crappy quality, super cheap meat that is bad. And we can always make the decision to invest a little bit more, spend a little bit more money, do it the right way, and work with people and companies and farms who are taking the extra time and effort to produce healthy and high quality animals. And I understand that we're not all in the same place economically, that we're not all, we don't have as good access to these farms or these people as other places. And, you know, even Diana Rogers herself said, look, at the end of the day, factory farm beef is still better than a Twinkie. Like, we can make better decisions always within the realm of our capability. So it's not like, if you can't eat the most perfect grass-fed high-end beef possible every day, so I'm just going to say fuck it and eat, you know, grilled cheese or something. I don't know. You can make better decisions within your, you know.
I've gotten stricter and stricter over the years. You know, there was a point where I'm like, you know, I'm just going to eat, you know, I'll eat the best meat I can when I can, and when I can, I'll eat what's available. And over the years, I've gravitated more towards all fast.
Yeah.
You know what? Everyone's gonna eat a burger at this shitty restaurant. I'm not gonna eat. Like, I've gotten good at fasting, and sometimes fasting is, you know, a couple days, and sometimes fasting is 6 hours.
It is a good tool. Like
Yeah.
I've actually implemented more fasting since quarantine than I normally would, because again, it's generally speaking sometimes different for women and men. Like we react to it differently. And then also your activity level and all that stuff. So my focus was always on trying to be like metabolically flexible. So I was never really into keto particularly, but I certainly eat lower carb than like the standard American diet. And I eat paleo, but I still eat oatmeal because I like it and I know it works for my body and all of these things.
I think we would eat. I think we could live in a house together. 'Cause it's like
100%.
I'm like paleo plus oatmeal.
Oatmeal. Yeah, exactly. 100%. 100%. And occasionally some whiskey. But anyway, yeah.
All right,
So
we're still on the same. All right, damn, how are we not hanging out? What's
I
going on?
know. I know. We're going to change it soon.
All right.
But yeah, so the metabolic flexibility thing I think is important because, again, kind of bringing this full circle, like what you're talking about at the beginning is like, I would tell anybody who comes to me looking to get healthier to start with a basic paleo approach. But at the end of the day, we all need to have our personalized nutrition. We all need to do what's going to be reasonable for us, what's going to be sustainable. Life is short. We want to enjoy things. So you don't need to be so strict. You don't have to be, or if you do, you have to understand the reasons why you have to be strict. But I think that having that flexibility is important because being resilient is more important than having ketones. Okay. Being resilient is more important than never eating a carb or having like a perfect six pack, because as we're seeing in the grand scheme of like what's going on in the world these days, that by and large, North Americans are not super resilient people physically because we don't take care of ourselves.
Well,
And so, yeah,
the average person is not resilient, and it's because the system's not resilient,
sure.
and
Yeah.
people are adopting the system because of lack of education.
Yes.
There's uh, the more I've learned why, like if you would have just told me like, hey, going keto and eating organ meat and going carnivore, just you're gonna lose some weight, it's gonna be awesome, and I'd be like, not very convincing. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, maybe if it's somebody who I trust and I just do what they say and I'm in that category, then whatever. But it's become very easy for me to just skip the burger in and out and wait till I get home to eat my high quality stuff when I understand why. It's it's we have a nation, we have an entire country, we'll say North America is just uneducated. And it's not because the information is not there, it's because people are ignoring it.
Yeah.
And I find that really fucking annoying. Do you find it annoying?
I do, but again, I have done a lot of personal inner work to get over it, because do you want to just be pissed off all the time that people aren't listening to information that will help them? Or do you just pivot and say, okay, I'm just going to keep living my life and people lead by example. I'm going to keep putting out the right information and people will come to me. And if I don't change everybody's mind, guess what? That's life. Like I try not to be apathetic, but I'm just like, because the thing is, the problem now is not that there isn't information, it's that there's too much information. And so there's always a study or a person or a piece of information that will back up what you already want to believe,
Yeah.
So if it's like, if it fits your macros is the best, or veganism is the best, or whatever, you'll find somebody who's an authority who will agree with you so that you don't have to challenge yourself and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back when you were referencing our food system, it's like, the current food system, the way it's built, meat is taxing the system. Like it's taxing the land. It's just taxing everything. And so people are normally having conversations inside the existing context. There's this inability to see outside the system. I mean, when you're going to school at 5 and you go into that system, and then you go into the system of corporate America, of college, university, and then into a corporate environment, you've never actually been outside the system. You can't see the system. So all arguments are happening within this context of the way things were told to you as they are. And it's simply not true. So it's like, for me, it's how do we get people? I mean, really what we're talking about is breaking people out of the matrix. It's like, how do we break people out of the matrix? And so they can actually see the matrix and see that the matrix is the fucking problem.
Well, one of the things you said about people, human nature being that people often have to hit rock bottom before they're willing to see a different way. I tend to agree with you, but my fear, and within the context of 2020, my fear is like, what the fuck is rock bottom? Because, right? Like, I feel like we hit it and then we just keep going and we keep going and we keep going.
Yeah.
So like, with, you know, talking about the food system again, I think one of the bigger systemic issues is that in North America, specifically, other places too, but North America, we have this belief that food should be super cheap, super delicious, and super easy and immediate all the time. So we
Yeah.
spend less money and time on preparing food than we ever have. And we expect it to be that way. So we don't, you know, we should be investing more money in our food. We should be spending more time making our food and making it with our friends and eating it together and sitting down and tasting it and loving it. We should be doing that, but that's not the culture we have. The culture we have is that you should get a burger and it should cost $3 and it should be right now. And that's how I want to eat. And if, you know what I mean? So like, it's going to be very hard to switch that mindset of like, no, you should spend more money on food and it should be more work for you, but it's going to pay off because it's delicious and it's healthy and it's good for the planet. That's a hard, it's there, the information's right in front of you, but it's very hard to convince people to change their habits when their habits are easy, you know?
Well, it comes down to what do people actually care about, and what people say they care about and what they actually care about are different. And this is, I think it's causing a lot of suffering in the world because people know there's like, it's like they say one thing, but then they behave differently. And then, that's actually a huge problem. And anytime anyone, like, my favorite thing to do is people talk a lot of shit, right? They're like, all right, they talk a big game. It's like, show me your bank account, show me that fucking credit card statement. How much are you spending on food? How much are you spending on your health? You know, or you're complaining about that gym membership that's a couple $100, but your bar tab is a couple $100 every weekend. Whip out that bank statement, and nobody ever does it. I'm like, show me your bank statement. They're like, it's like, yeah, you know what's up. Like, go get your shit in order. So, but we have a whole country.
Yeah.
We have a whole country that is, you look at the country's bank statement. What do we value? What do we care about? It's bullshit.
Yeah. I spend so much money on food. I'll show you my bank statement. It's scary. I spend a lot of money on food.
Well, this is what's interesting. I remember I was running a CrossFit gym, and I remember coaching people on nutrition 08, 09. By the way, if you were a gym owner, a CrossFit gym owner in 08, 09, you didn't make money. You were rare if you were. I made some money. And so I remember making $3,000 a month. And I was living in Memphis, Tennessee. So the cost of living, my rent was $800. But I remember having gym members, and I was telling them, like, they were complaining about the price of food. And I'm like, they're like, oh, it's easy for you to say. I'm like, is it? He's like, I make $3,000 a month. You know what my grocery bill is? It's $1,000.
Yeah.
It's like a third of my income is going to food. And they're just like, oh my God. And it's like you were saying before, people have been programmed to believe that food should be cheap and convenient. It's like, this is not reality.
Yep.
This is I'm big on water too. I go get spring water, and it's like, this is what's going in this vessel, this thing that's gonna, like, this is the only thing you have. Everything else is bullshit. This human body, like, this is the greatest gift you were ever given.
Yeah.
And you're going to put McDonald's in it, and you're going to drink tap water. I'm like, what? And the government is deciding, like, when did they do a good job? Like, if you look at
anything,
and people, there's this naivete that I think people love to adopt because it makes them feel comfortable and they don't have to make any changes. Like, oh, I'm comfortable. I like to say, what is your job? What industry do you work in? Okay. And I can talk to anybody who's in any industry. I was talking to somebody who works in psychology the other day. How well does the government regulate that? How well what's the mental health of our nation? What's the whatever? Or, if somebody works in the oil and gas, or it doesn't matter what industry you go, how good is the government? How good of a job does the government do in your industry? And then they go, well, it's all fucked up. And I go, well, how well do you think they're doing all the other stuff? And they go, oh, it's like, yeah, like they're not doing a good job in the health space. I can guarantee you. It's only gotten worse.
I mean, you gotta take matters into your own hands. Like again, we could do a second, third, fourth hour if we want to get into government and conspiracies and what they're trying to do to whatever. But I think
I don't want to. I don't like the word conspiracy because there's actual evidence, and then people like to use that word, and then people throw it out. But
I'm just gonna switch slightly, and I want to ask you a question, because one of the things that we've been talking about here.
Nope. I'm interviewing you. You can't ask me.
Wait for it. I love that laugh. Okay. Right. So we were talking before about how there's like potentially too much information. And then there's also, of course, like the individual bias where people seek out the stuff that just is going to validate what they want to believe or what's easier for them to kind of live with and all that stuff. So my question is always, and we all have that bias. Some of us are worse than others, and some of us will allow ourselves to read something and have our minds changed, or to admit that we were wrong. And I would hope that we'd all be working towards that space, because we're all going to be better off if we can have a little bit like less ego and be willing to like learn and change our minds, right? But how would you encourage the average person who isn't in this world all the time and who's trying to get healthy and like truly doesn't know, is veganism better? Is paleo better? Is CrossFit better? Should I fast? Like all of this stuff. How would you even recommend that they dive into this world of information? How do they get through it? How do they read it? How do they critique it? How do they understand it for themselves? Like, what would your advice be?
Well, everybody who digs into any field, I think, needs to identify a primary teacher first. And they like, if you look at any coach who got into coaching, CrossFit's a great example of this, just because that's the world that we both lived in at some point. And that is, everyone that thought that the CrossFit method was the best thing that ever fucking happened, right? And then once you've done it for several years and you get introduced to other ideas, you go, oh, that was a great stepping stone into a more sophisticated conversation. Well, if you were doing machines at Planet Fitness and then you got into CrossFit, fucking great. Like that was a great stepping stone. And so I think a lot of us who are like really advanced in our knowledge might poo-poo the basics like CrossFit or something like that. And it's like, no, that's good. Go do that for 12 to 18 months. And then when you're tired, we can have a different conversation. And that's a good thing to do. But I say find a teacher who you resonate with, who your intuition lines up with, and who has the results that you want.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, is when COVID hit and I started watching all the health department directors of all these different cities get up, and they were fat, sick, or they looked like Skeletor, the LA health department woman that she got there. I'm like, who the fuck is listening to this person about health? It's like, you're disgusting. I want to punch whoever put her in charge in the throat.
Tell us how you really feel. Tell us how you really feel about it.
Yeah. See, this is why you shouldn't be asking me questions. But like, the thing is, by the way, I let myself get really angry and depressed for about a week, and it was one of the best things ever. And because I was able to turn around and go, well, what am I going to do about it? It's like, am I going to be just another person on Instagram complaining, or am I actually going to do the hard thing? The easy thing is to point out what's wrong. The hard thing is to actually create action that makes a real difference. And so I'm very motivated in that area. And a lot of conversations with myself, but find the person who gets the result. Here's the thing, is people are listening to people who don't have the result. You're going to go listen to a medical doctor in a lab coat who's sitting under fluorescent lights all day and is out of shape. Fuck that. That guy needs to go get his life in order. All right. And any coach is trying to teach someone to be healthy and they're fat and out of shape, they got to get their shit in order. You know what? It probably reflects in the amount of money they're making. So what you got to do is, where you start is you go, look, like for me, it's Paul Check. It's like, I got a new thing that pops up. I run it through Paul. Why? Because he lives the life. Like when I'm 59 years old, I hope I can do what he does, you know, and he has the lifestyle to match. It's not like he just got really physically healthy. I've hung out with him and his family, and I go, this guy is full of love. He's on purpose. He's got a mission. He's healthy, and he's making the world a better place. I'm going, dude, that's my filter. for when I'm not sure. When I'm not sure, I run it through him. And so I tell people, find that first. And at some point, you start accumulating enough knowledge. Now, here's the thing is, for me, it's like, oh, if I'm going to start somewhere, I'm like, start with water. You're primarily made up of water. It's the thing we consume the most of. Let's do a good job with that. It's not going to be like snorting, NO explode up your nose or anything like that, but you're not going to see that instant stimulant response that people want. But the thing is like, let's get, just like the basics. What's the thing that it's usually the things that are the most mundane that make the biggest difference.
Yep.
If I tackle the water conversation for the next 3 years, that's going to make a huge difference than if I'm drinking water that has chlorine and fluoride pumped into it. And so, but it's not something that's easy to see or anything like that. But I tell people, like, find the person who's getting the result you want, and then start with the mundane and be happy with progress. I had a friend I was hanging out with last week. He used to be obese, and he lost so much weight that he had the skin hanging off his belly. He goes, man, how do I should I get a surgery? We had this conversation. I go, what are you doing now? And he told me, I go, I'm using this, and this. I'm like, are you making progress? And he goes, yeah. I go, okay, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It was not the sexy answer he wanted, but you know what though? This is why it's good to have someone that you look up to that's going to tell you this kind of shit, because it's not just the information, it's the perspective, it's the context in which we're having the conversation. And what we're missing right now is context. And the context people are living inside of is that system we were talking about. The sick care system context is the world in which people are living. It's like, okay, well, we have to change context. I can't even have a conversation with somebody. I caught myself on Instagram recently. I'm like, you don't really need to worry about this. I used to worry about the vaccine, and I realized that they thought I was foolish because we were having a conversation. We're having different conversations. Their context is, get my food from Food Lion and go see the doctor, and I'm going to send my kids to school and they'll babysit them really nice for 8 hours so I can do what I want to do. And then, have I triggered enough people yet? So
anyone still listening?
And it's like our contexts are so different. It's like, we need a vaccine. I'm like, and I'm sitting here thinking, how long does it take before we have a vaccine? And B, is it going to work? Because the flu vaccine doesn't work. And everyone wants to point at polio or something. And I don't even want to get down that route because there's
please don't make me talk about vaccines. I'm so fucking tired of it.
No, yeah. So it's like, but the context is different. It's because I'm like, a vaccine, a really well-developed vaccine, is 1% or less of my health conversation. And I don't get them, but I do think there are people that may need to get vaccines at different points. It's not something that they should just go away, but we're having a different conversation. It's good for us to recognize, oh, this is the context. And that's what I'm interested in, is creating enough context that when we have a conversation, I can reference my own context and go watch that video, go read that chapter, and then you'll understand the conversation that we're actually having.
Yeah. I would say 2 things that kind of came up when you were talking that I wanted to highlight is, I think that's great advice, like finding somebody that is almost like a mentor or kind of like a kind of a guiding light, that's like somebody that looks and lives the way you want to look and live. I like that approach a lot. I would also add to it something that I am trying to do when I work with individuals and coaching capacity too, is this concept of, like, again, personalizing your approach to health by being very clear on what you consider health to be, because it's going to be slightly different from person to person. And also, like, empowering yourself to listen to what your brain and your body is telling you, and do the work to try things yourself. So, like, for example, if someone comes to me and is like, I really want to get healthier and fit and stuff, but I'm, I kind of want to be a vegan. Like, normally I just be like, look, you're speaking to the wrong person. Like, I can't help you. Like, I don't agree
Yeah.
with this. But now it's maybe more of a like, okay, if you really want to do this, go be 100% vegan for a month or whatever. Like, do it, make notes, write about how you feel, like be intelligent about it and be, planned about it, and then see and pay attention to what your body's telling you. Because I have all these women who come to me who are like, again, I've been keto for 2 years because I was really overweight and I lost a ton of weight with keto. And now I have no period. I feel like shit. I have no energy. I'm terrified to eat a strawberry, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, empower yourself to, know the answer already. You don't need me to tell you that, like, maybe you need to make some adjustments to your diet, but you're waiting for me to give you permission because you think I know more than you, because you're scared and you don't trust yourself. And it's like, I'll tell you, maybe go try to eat a strawberry, but really it's about you listening to what your body is already telling you and then doing the work of like, all right, if I want to start incorporating carbs again, let's do this in a measured way and keep track and make notes and be smart about it. This is a journey. This isn't like you listen to the one person who tells you how to be healthy and then you're healthy and now I'm healthy for the rest of my life. It's a constant moving process and evolution. And you need to be willing to like sign up for the long haul and like keep evolving and making changes, because there's no end game to this. And
well,
if you
Ashleigh, that sounds ridiculous. It sounds like you're advocating that people be responsible for their own health and that they tune into, the infinite knowledge of their body. Weird.
I'm playing a losing game, aren't I?
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Okay, but wait, there was one other thing I wanted to say.
You're never going to sell that diet.
I know. This is why I'm not that popular. But anyway, okay. But sometimes people listen, and feels very good when they listen.
I also want to point out I'm in 100% agreement with you, and a lot of the work we do is to help get people to a point where they can actually hear their body.
Yeah.
But I want people, like, give yourself some grace. Like, the audience, if you're listening to this, give yourself some grace, because you weren't taught to listen to your body. You were actually taught your whole life to ignore your body. And here's the thing. You were told to sit in a chair at a desk inside a classroom. And if you had any emotional response, which is the language of the body, you were told to shut up. You were told to suck it up. And then if you did express yourself, they took away movement. They took away recess. They took away sports. So we have an entire culture that has trained us to put information on a pedestal, and our own intuition and our own body doesn't matter. That's what we were taught. And so what Ashleigh's talking about is we need to learn. And how long were you trained to ignore your body? Well, it might take that long to learn how to listen to it again. If you looked at me 6-7 years ago, like, that dude is fucking fit. I was 35 pounds heavier. I was competing at a very high level. I was a fucking beefcake. By the way, I get way more chicks now, so just so everyone knows.
Shit. All right.
No, but the thing is like I've been on a path for the last 6 years of tuning in my body. And if you ask me then, I remember I had a leadership coach. He goes, "Do you think you're in tune with your body? You listen to your body?" I was like, "Oh yeah. I mean, look at me. Of course I listen to my body, And he was very wise, and I was very naive. And over the last 6 years, I learned, like, I was not in touch with my body. I was very good at dominating it. How good are you dominating your body? And then I got to a point where I go, "Oh, I want to start tuning in." And the tuning in process took time. I'm still tuning in. I'm still getting better at it, because there's 25 years of not listening to it. So I was like, I got to undo all of that.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's not easy. It's something and it's worth doing. The listening to your body is one of the most rewarding things I've ever experienced.
Yes, that is like literally the message, that it takes a long time. It's a lot of work. It's daunting, and it's absolutely worth it and good. And if we can just change this approach to, we need to come up with the next 3-week get fit fast plan, and then there's an end game, and just throw that shit out and just say, okay, let's approach our entire life like this is just a journey to feel good and be healthy and be a good human being in the world. And we're always going to keep learning. We're never going to be 100% there, but that's cool. That's the fun of it. That's the journey. I think that's the approach that we need to take, because otherwise we're going to be very sad and disappointed in themselves.
For the coaches out there who are nodding their head and going, of course, of course, of course.
Yeah.
By the way, if you go straight for the jugular, you're probably not going to make a lot of money or have a lot of clients like what we're talking about. But I'm a big fan of doing the Trojan horse. And that is the 30 to 90-day program that leads them into a 1-year program of working with you where, so again, I'm going to sell you what you want, lose weight fast. I'm going to sell you what you want. There's going to be a lot of stuff in there that you didn't buy that's going to open your eyes to, oh, this is a much deeper conversation than I thought. And then by the end of the 30, 60, 90-day program, whatever it is that you build, enroll them into a longer relationship. I think that's how I like to do things. So I was like, what Ashleigh and I are talking about, this is the best place we can be taking people as health and fitness professionals.
Yeah.
But if that's the only thing you preach, you're gonna have it's gonna be a tough battle.
Yeah. And like the other thing that I would add to part of this conversation about like finding people, whether it's social media or in real life or in your gym community or whatever, that you can kind of like look up to or follow in some way and all of these things. And also speaking to like our combined frustrations about just the world and what people are willing to listen to or not listen to and all of that stuff. The only thing that like one of my complaints, one of my grievances about communicating with the fitness industry online and specifically during COVID times has been the manner in which a lot of smart people are trying to get their information out. So, both my parents were psychologists. So like, obviously I'm fucked up from that, but I like, yeah, totally fucked up from it.
I mean, anyone who gets into psychology has some major childhood wounds anyway, which they pass on to their kids. I'm
you see this massive chip on my shoulder? Anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I've studied a massive amount of psychology myself. That's like the majority of my work. And so it's like, it's because I was fucked up.
And that's okay. Like, I know that a lot of people do it because they're totally just building up this awesome like psychology wall so they don't have to deal with their own shit. But like all that to say that I see things through that lens a little bit. And so one of the things that I'm noticing is some of the people that I follow on Instagram who are making statements or comments or advice about how to be healthier, how to deal with the current situation we're in, all of that stuff. And they're doing it in a way that is consistently negative, condescending, aggressive, rude. And look, I am all of those things sometimes, okay? We all are, right? But I find myself like going online and looking at these people who I completely agree with and still being totally turned off by their message. And so I'm like, if you're preaching to somebody who already agrees with you and I don't want to follow you anymore, how do you think the people who you're actually trying to reach, who don't agree with you, don't understand, don't believe what you're saying, how do you think they're going to respond to you telling them that they're fat and stupid and idiots and they're doing the wrong thing and they're dumb? Like it's basic human psychology. You do not get people to change their behaviors by telling them that they're wrong and stupid over and over again. It's not good. It's not sustainable. It doesn't create the right environment for learning and connecting and progressing. Okay. So like, I'm not saying we all need to hold hands, whatever, but like this consistently just negative and again, patronizing, like we're making fun of the people who are doing the thing that's different than us and like all of that stuff. It's confusing to me how many people I believe in and agree with and respect are doing it that way. And I understand
they're triggered.
Yeah, it's coming from a place of frustration. And I do understand, but it's why I've actually kind of feel like I've taken a step back a little bit in recent months in terms of the messages I'm trying to put out. And I understand that could be problematic to some people because they're like, well, where are you? Why aren't you commenting on this? And it's like, because I can't be a part of a conversation that I don't think is even trying to be helpful anymore. It's just people yelling their opinions. And I don't want to be a part of it. I can't.
Yeah, it's like, I've gotten some flack over the last few months of like, why are you addressing or not addressing these certain things? I'm like, well, I could just repeat what everyone else is saying, and add, which I actually think is a problem. I know that whoever is wanting me to do more thinks that that's a solution, but it's not. And it's like, it's usually young people, that want more. And then as you get older, you realize, I was an idiot back in the day. just posting all sorts of crazy shit online and starting arguments. And I was definitely there. Um, and yeah, it takes a lot of maturity and it's wisdom, really. It's wisdom is having accumulated the knowledge, but also put it into action and saying what works inside of reality,
Yeah.
what works and doesn't work, because before that's just an idea. And when you've accumulated enough wisdom like yourself, this is the type of thinking, this is the approach you have. And when you have a lot of knee-jerk reactions, it's just a lack of wisdom. So they're having to build that up by making mistakes now.
Yeah. And maybe it's just like, again, this is sort of like simple how you teach a child, but like, say you're trying to convince somebody on any topic, whether it's vaccines or wearing masks or eating meat or not eating meat or whatever it is, and you're triggered and you're pissed and you're frustrated that people aren't getting it. Like, think about if the person you're speaking to and you're writing your post on Instagram, instead of being a stranger who disagrees with you that you think is stupid, think about if that was somebody in your life that you love, Would you talk to them like that? Would you try to convince them by telling them they're stupid and being mean to them? I would hope not, So like, let's try to do that approach. Because if you're really trying to do this to help people, making fun of them is not helping them. It's not.
Yeah.
So like, let's figure out a better way. Let's be nice. I can't believe I'm telling people to be nice, but this is a fucked up world we're in, but like, man. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So I like that, approaching people from a place of love.
Yeah.
Like you're talking to your mom.
Yes.
Like, I'm not gonna go tell my mom she's an idiot.
Yeah, that's not gonna help.
Yeah. Maybe when I was younger, but asshole teenager. But no, I didn't do that.
We've moved past it.
All right, Ashleigh. I loved having you on the show today. We're gonna do more. We're gonna do more shows.
I would love that, and I'm gonna come. At some point, come back to the States because I miss it very much, and I miss the sun, and I miss the traveling. So we'll have to hang out and eat some raw liver together.
Most definitely. Where do people find you?
Best two places, probably my website, which is ashleighvanhouten.com. Put that in the show notes because nobody will spell it. But my podcast is there. You can sign up for a weekly newsletter. All kinds of fun stuff is on the website. And then social media, I'm pretty much only on Instagram, and that's at The Muscle Maven. And I will say hi and send you pictures of the weird foods I'm making all the time.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mike.
you.